As of today, I've been following a carnivore diet for 450 days. Crazy, huh? Do you want to know what I eat, how my cholesterol is, if I'm nutrient deficient, and what has happened with my weight? If so, stick around and we will deep dive into all of that. Hi, I'm Jen. If you're new here, I'm delighted to meet you. I'm a doctor of physical therapy and I've experienced radical healing on a carnivore diet, and I can help you to achieve abundant health through diet too. Like I said, today is day 450 since I went headfirst into the carnivore lifestyle. I'll tell you first what I ate when I started, and then later I'll tell you what I eat now. As a new baby carnivore, I allowed myself to have anything that was an animal product. I ate beef, chicken, eggs, bacon, pork chops, seafood, pork rinds, and dairy, including cheese and heavy cream. I even included coffee, though it's technically not carnivore. There are literally hundreds of foods that you can eat on a carnivore diet. People think it's restrictive, but I definitely disagree. Check the caption and I'll leave a link where you can go to download my carnivore diet cheat sheet, which has something like 170 foods that you can eat on a carnivore diet. During my first several months on this diet, I did not count macros or calories or fat grams or anything like that. I didn't do any fasting. I didn't test my glucose or ketones. I didn't do any of that. I simply ate meat as much as I wanted without a care in the world. This was the best decision in the world for me because it helped me to get unaddicted from carbs and processed foods and allowed me to completely stop binge eating, but more on that later. My only goal for the diet during the first year was to put my psoriasis into remission and get off the immunosuppressants that I'd been injecting for years. After about 6 months as a carnivore, I finally felt ready to start weaning off the medications, but I was really nervous, like really nervous. I did everything I could to make sure I was prepared. I learned all I could from Dr. Annette Bosworth, who promotes a keto diet by way of checking your glucose and ketones and making sure that your ratio of the two falls within a certain range for immune support. For example, if your blood sugar is 80 and your ketones are 2.0, then your Dr. Boz ratio, or 80 divided by 2, is 40. She says that for immune healing, your Dr. Boz ratio should be under 40. So I started tracking, I increased my fat intake, I decreased my protein intake, and I started paying a really close attention to that Dr. Boz ratio. I checked it every day for months, and I wasn't always under 40, but I was usually fairly close. After a couple months of that, I felt like I was as prepared as I could be, and I stopped injecting my immunosuppressant. This was in September of 2022. I've now been off of it for 8 months, which is all I could have dreamed of when I first started the carnivore diet. There were a couple issues for me when being on a high-fat diet though. I found that I wasn't sleeping as well and my weight was definitely not budging. And my blood sugar was getting super low at times. Sometimes it was in the 50s. So I started increasing the protein in my diet and I felt a lot better. The problem is that I didn't decrease fat when I increased protein, so I was suddenly getting a lot more calories and gained a few pounds. By the end of my first year on a carnivore diet, my weight was basically the same, maybe a few pounds lower, but basically the same as when I started. I was actually kind of okay with that. Again, I was only trying to heal my psoriasis, and I felt good about having achieved that monumental goal. But then I decided to shift my focus and try to lose the 10 to 20 pounds that had been a secondary goal for me to get off. I tried a lot of things to do that. I tried drastically decreasing my calories. I tried staying in a very specific calorie range, which would put me in a deficit each day, though not as severe as before. And I toyed around with fasting. Mostly intermittent fasting, but I did try some longer fasts as well. Keep in mind, I was working out all the while. I've been lifting weights consistently for years. But each of these restrictions I placed would make me lose a few pounds during the first week or so, and then I'd begin to feel restricted and would rebound in a way that would make me overeat and I'd gain all the way back. I found that I was mostly overeating really palatable foods like bacon and pork rinds and ribs, those kinds of delicious things. One other thing happened a few months ago that made it clear to me that I needed to eliminate certain foods from my carnivore diet. So I did the lion diet for a month, mostly for a fun challenge, but also to ensure that I wasn't eating anything that might sort of trigger my psoriasis, because I was very diligent about that as I was weaning off my medication. For 1 month, I ate nothing but beef, lamb, salt, and water. I was also eating lots of beef fat at the time, which is probably why I didn't lose any weight during that time either. After a month, I began adding food items back one at a time. The first one I tried adding back was coffee. I immediately knew it didn't agree with me because it made my skin itchy, and after the 3rd day, I woke up with a rash on my neck. I've actually tried adding it back a couple more times, but same thing every time. I never even bothered trying to add dairy back because I know I tend to be a little addicted to it. And also there seems to be some connection between dairy and autoimmune stuff, so I just haven't even bothered. Eventually I may try to add some limited dairy like butter and maybe just butter, we'll see. But I haven't tried yet. So what I eat now is beef, lamb, chicken, a little seafood, eggs, and honestly that's basically it. I've also been trying to get more organs into my diet, and so far that includes tiny bits of liver as well as a seasoning called pluck that's made with an organ blend. I've cut way back on foods like bacon, ribs, and pork rinds, which I know I tend to overeat. And I shoot for 1.5 to 2 pounds of food per day. That's a pretty sweet spot for me that allows me to slowly lose weight without feeling restricted. And I don't do any fasting. I almost always eat 3 meals a day, again, in order to avoid feeling restricted. My diet is extremely simple. Basically, everything I eat is one ingredient, and I basically just season with salt. Here are some examples of exactly what I ate over the last few days in case you want more info. And here is a list of some of the health benefits I've experienced from the carnivore diet. My skin is now clear from the autoimmune skin issues that I used to suffer from, particularly psoriasis and vasculitis. I'm no longer a binge eater, though I did mention a bit ago that I have to be careful when I restrict too tightly, otherwise I tend to overeat. I think that's probably from my binge history. This in itself is basically a miracle. Trust me, I had been binging since I was 15 years old and I haven't binged in over a year now. I'm no longer constantly constipated and having to rely on Miralax to help me poop just 1 or 2 times a week. In fact, I pooped today and it was a number 4 on the Bristol scale. Thank you very much. My acne isn't completely gone, but it's significantly better. I no longer have chronic strep throat infections. And like I said, I haven't really lost any significant weight, but my body composition has improved. Those are the main health highlights for me, though there are many, many other things. Now let's talk about my cholesterol, shall we? I recently had it tested and it's really good. My HDL is 88 and my triglycerides are 49. Both of those are super good and predict that my risk for cardiovascular disease is super low. My total cholesterol and LDL numbers are slightly elevated, but technically not even that much higher than the standard recommendation. My total cholesterol is 218 and my LDL is 121. Here's the thing you have to understand about cholesterol, specifically LDL. LDL cholesterol isn't inherently bad. However, it can turn bad when it's exposed to glucose. It gets damaged and turns into SD-LDL or small dense LDL. And these small dense particles are the ones that are responsible for building up along your arterial walls. LB-LDL or large buoyant LDL particles are not dangerous and they do not lead to cardiovascular disease. The cool thing is that you can predict whether your LDL particles are the small dense kind or the large buoyant kind simply based on your HDL and your triglyceride levels. If your HDL is high and your triglycerides are low, that indicates that the particles that make up your LDL cholesterol are the large buoyant ones. If you want more information on that or you want to assess your own numbers, go to delightedtomeetyou.com/cholesterol. But today I can do you one better. I actually had the particles tested during my lab work and my small dense LDL, those bad ones, basically undetectable. So to summarize, my cholesterol is fantastic, even after eating a very high fat diet of meat and eggs for over a year. Actually, for 450 days. Another common question that I get asked is, do I take any supplements? The answer for the last year has been no. However, when I got that lab work done, it showed that my vitamin D and magnesium levels are a little low. I have lab work from 3 years ago before I was a carnivore, and both were low back then as well. So the deficiencies are not a result of the carnivore diet. However, being on this diet hasn't helped them a ton either. But because of that, I recently started supplementing vitamin D and magnesium. I will take them both for about 6 months, and then I'll have lab work done again to see if they're improving. My lab work also showed some issues with my liver. This finding in particular is pretty frustrating to me. Immunosuppressants like the one that I took for 3 years for my psoriasis are known to cause liver issues. So for that reason, I actually had liver function tests every year that I was on them. When I first started the medication, my liver function testing was perfect. But over the course of the 3 years, the numbers got worse and worse. The annoying thing is that nobody ever mentioned it to me, so I honestly had no idea. When I had this recent lab work done, my liver function tests were a little out of whack, so I looked back at my old results. That's how I know. They're actually better now than they were 2 years ago, but still higher than they should be. I'm super annoyed that I was damaging my liver for 3 years, and my doctor, who was prescribing meds and reading these labs, never even told me. Hopefully the carnivore diet will continue to heal my liver, but I'm also going to start a new supplement called NAC to help detoxify the liver. Just like the vitamin D and the magnesium, I'll take it for the next 6 months, then retest my labs, and then hopefully stop taking all the supplements soon, assuming that everything comes back within normal limits. I'll spare you all the details, but I also had my kidneys and thyroid checked and they were all good. So here I am, 450 days into a carnivore diet. I've never felt better. I've overcome several chronic health issues, and I don't appear to be doing any damage to my body on this diet that is full of saturated fats. If this doesn't convince you that meat heals, then I don't know what will. Thank you so much for joining me today and celebrating with me 450 days of carnivore. If you liked this, I would love it if you'd hit the like button and subscribe, and catch me on Instagram where we can chat every day.